Hey all. So I'm going to go over the uh, how skills for the mindfulness section very briefly. I'm already gone over the what skills, which kind of is like, well, what is mindfulness? And then we're going to go through the how skills, which is okay. So how do you go about implementing this? This is incredibly. I have to look into the camera, which is on another person, which is really awkward. But anyway, we'll see how this goes. Uh, this is handouts 5 to 5C. And the first how skill is non-judgmentally. And I want to be briefer with this because we've already gone over it once. But the key things to remember is the difference between discrimination and evaluation. And again, discrimination isn't a bad thing, even though it has that connotation sometimes. In this case, discrimination we are defining as being able to tell two two different things apart from one another. And so the example that the book uses, and that I think is pretty easy, is like a jeweler discriminates between a diamond and not a diamond. So there's certain properties that a stone has to have be considered a diamond, and so that's discriminating. Whereas evaluating is puts kind of like a label on it of this is either good or bad. And for example, values really come into play when we're talking about um, evaluations. And so for the non-judgmental piece, we're wanting to let go of the evaluations. Um, we use the example also in group of like you see a lion going at a person and it looks like the lion's going to eat the person. Well, uh, 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 and a knee-jerk reaction to that, it would be an evaluation of, oh, that's bad. But the reality is, well, bad for who? Like bad for the person who's getting eaten, maybe, but it's potentially fantastic for the lion who's potentially hungry and getting a meal. So it all depends on what the values are and what perspective is being taken. So um, just kind of thinking of the non-judgmental piece, keep an eye out for should statements. That's a good indicator that you are evaluating something as either good or bad. When you have a should statement, try and replace those with kind of emotions and how you are feeling about it. And then also try and remove anytime you notice any judgmental language like that's good or that's bad. You can, instead of removing out the good and or bad and replacing it with facts. So yeah, so there's that. Let's see. I think that's it from the standpoint of going over non-judgmentally really quickly. Um, we we're all judgmental. It's something that happens that tends to be automatic, and that is okay. What this module is saying is not to eliminate all of this completely. It's to increase awareness of potentially how judgmental we are in certain situations and what we can do to modify that a little bit. So the next thing is the next skill is one mindfully. And one mindfully is being completely in the present moment and also doing one thing at a time. So one mindfully is really getting at um, multitasking. So, and why would it get at that? Well, number one, multitasking is not efficient. There's plenty of empirical research out there that shows that multitasking is not super effective. And so if you're going to wash a dish, wash a dish. If you're going to drive a car, drive a car. If you're going to play with a kiddo, play with a kiddo. And a really common response to that is like, this is not realistic because, I'm cooking dinner and doing washing dishes and my kids are asking me to do this or that and the other. How can I not be doing all that simultaneously? And the response is, you can be washing a dish or you can be cooking. And if your kiddo comes up to you and says, hey, and they ask you a question, you can pause what you're doing in terms of cooking, turn to your kiddo, answer the question, go back to cooking, and continue on, as opposed to what's really common, right, is you're cooking and you make a comment or you're not fully present in that moment, and who knows what happens. So it is possible to do. It's also really hard because we multitask a lot. So yeah, and then the other piece in terms of just being completely in the present moment, the past has already happened. The future hasn't happened yet. And really the present moment is the only thing we've got. And we sometimes forget that. And a statement that I have used in the past and is in the book that is, I think, particularly salient for some folks is the statement of, the pain of the present moment is enough. Like, that is more than enough to deal with. So let that be. So again, focusing and being one mindful in terms of being in the moment. Also knowing that it's going to become natural that you start thinking about what's happened in the past and planning for the future. Especially right now with everything that's going on, there's a ton of potentially planning for this, that, and the other. And in my case, it's thinking in the past of like, did I wash my hands? Did I do this? Did I touch that? So there's been one mindfully is going to be a difficult skill right now, and something to keep practicing. And then the last one is doing things effectively. And really it's the idea of doing what is going to work in the moment to get your goals met. And I think a critical piece, take home point for that is you got to know what your goals are. And so this ties into other DBT skills. But in order to do things effectively, you got to know, okay, well, what's my goal in this situation? And it's also not, it's at times, playing by the rules when you have to play by the rules. An example of this would be, you can't stand airport security. And like, that is the rule, that is the system that is set up, right? And so if your goal is to get on an airplane and fly to wherever you're going, like, you have to go through security, and you've got folks, right, who don't go about things effectively, and they're the ones who you see who are complaining and saying they're not going to do this or that, and then it just delays the inevitable, as opposed to other folks where it's like, you know what, this is annoying and frustrating, and I need to do this, that, and the other, such that my goals are met. Yeah, it's being, in some ways, doing things effectively is also being strategic. And again, that even goes back to knowing and needing to know what your goals are. So those are the 3 how skills. I wish that this could be done in person and I wasn't having to talk to a tiny camera on top of my computer. And I am practicing the effectiveness skill of this is what is going to be most effective in this moment. So hope everyone is doing well, and stay safe, and talk to y'all soon. All right.